Ladies and gentlemen, straight from our archives, please welcome Brian Clemmer.
Two ideas that I like to get across to you. That's all I do is two ideas. One is you've heard Miles, you've heard Eddie, you've heard all these different people talk, Chris Ofus, Marlis, on limiting beliefs and belief systems. So rather than do any of that kind of stuff with you, because that's the heart of my business, is Proverbs 23:7, as a man or woman thinketh in their heart. Romans 12:2 is, right, be ye not conformed to this world, but be transformed by renewing of the mind. So then the question becomes, how the heck do you transform you? How do you renew the mind? So two things that I want to do with you is, number one, how do you discover limiting beliefs? Because I'm going to suggest it's the limiting beliefs that you don't even know that you have that are tripping you up. It's not the ones you know about. You know you have a limiting belief about trust. You know what? That's not tripping you up near as much as the belief systems you don't even know that you have. So number one thing I want you to walk away with is, how do you discover limiting beliefs that you don't even know that you have? Sounds kind of like a Zen thing, right? Don't even know you have them. How can you discover them? Tell you that in the next 20 minutes. Second thing that I want you to walk away with is, then, how do you change them? You have a limiting belief around your prosperity. You have one of the great things I love about Bob is Bob, they call him Dr. Increase, but it's not just increase about financial prosperity. It's increase with your walk with Christ. It's increase with your relationships. It's increase of every area of your life. But let's say you discover you have a limiting belief in some area. How the heck do you change it then? So those are the two things. You walk away with those. And then the original thing I was going to talk about, we may or may not get to. That's the only sales form you'll ever need. And everybody is in sales. Any of you have a negative reaction to sales? Come on, tell the truth. You have a negative reaction to sales. Come on, raise your hand, tell the truth. Right, truth will set you free. Got to tell the truth first. Right? If you have a negative reaction to sales, get over it. You are. Everybody's in sales. How many of you have ever gone on a date? You sold. You either sold them on asking you out, or you sold them on saying yes, but you sold. How many of you have ever been married? Big sale. By the way, biggest problem in most marriages, I hadn't planned on talking about this, but the biggest problem in most marriages, my perspective, and I don't claim to be an expert, but biggest problem in most marriages is the same problem as most sales. We forget to service what we sold in the first place. Have you ever comforted someone that was feeling bad? That was sales. All sales is communicating such that you cause action. Most people get confused and they think sales is shoving something down somebody's throat that they don't even want. That's why they have troubles evangelizing. That's sales.
I want to talk about a balanced life. I believe that character and integrity do count big time. Oh, I know the world of today frequently talks about the fact that, your personal life doesn't really matter as long as your professional life is okay, as long as you're doing your job, and that is pure baloney. I was amused a few years ago when two of our presidential candidates were debating family values. And they never could determine what family values were. And the reason is very simple. There's no such thing as family values. They're life values. When I talk about life values, you see, the same person at home is going to go to work, and the same person that went to work is going to come back home. And you will discover, as I have, as I analyzed it very carefully, I discovered that if you have the qualities to be a good husband or wife or a good mom or a good dad, those same character qualities will make you a good executive or a successful salesperson, wherever, because those qualities are life's qualities. Now, when I talk about things as being relative, I know you've heard people say, well, everything is relative. Let me tell you something, folks. There's not a business person in this room today who would deliberately hire a treasurer or a CPA who admitted that he or she was just relatively honest. Isn't that true? Character really does count. When I get home and see the redhead, now some of you know that when I talk about my wife, I always call her the redhead. She's a decided redhead. I mean, one day she just decided that she was going to be a redhead. She's an excited redhead. She's been inducted into the MasterCard Hall of Fame. And actually, she just bought a little car that gives her 19 miles to the gallon. Now, when I talk about the redhead, I always call her the redhead. When I'm talking to her, it's Sugar Baby. And her name is Jean. And after 55 years of marriage, I got to tell you, we're more in love by far than we've ever been. By far. We talk more, we do more things together than we ever have done before. As I tell people, I've only been married once, but I married 23 women when I married her. I don't have a clue which one I'm going to wake up with tomorrow morning. I really don't. But so far, I love them all. I mean, it's worked out really good. Now, when I get home, actually, I don't get home until the day after tomorrow. When I get home, I guarantee you she's not going to look at me and say, now, honey, tell me the truth. Were you relatively faithful to me while you were gone? See, some things are right, some things are wrong, and we need to understand that character really does count. Integrity is one of the great freers of life. With integrity, do the right thing, and that means you have no guilt feelings. With integrity, you have nothing to fear because you have nothing to hide. Now think about it. With fear and guilt removed from your shoulders, doesn't it just make sense? You can fly higher, faster, further, and do more in the process. You have your freedom. That's what it's all about. Integrity really does matter. Emerson said, ability without honor has no value. And he also said, if you would lift me up, you must be on higher ground. Now, I believe he's absolutely 100% right on that. There's no question in my mind on that one. Laurel Cutter said that values determine behavior. Behavior determines reputation. Reputation determines advantages. A number of years ago, I bought a new Cadillac. I bought it from the third dealership I went to look at Cadillacs. That was the car I wanted at that particular time. I was talking to a friend of mine, and he said, well, what you ought to do is you ought to call Chuck Bellis at Roger Meyer Cadillac, because he's been there a long time, and whatever Chuck tells you, you can absolutely depend on. I drove in to see Chuck Bellis. And the story is rather fascinating, but the bottom line is less than 20 minutes and we made a deal. And the reason we were able to do that in 20 minutes was because Chuck Bellis had been working on me for over 20 years. Now, wait a minute. You said you just met him and never. That's right. What do you mean he'd been working on you over 20 years? 23 years earlier, he had gone to work at that Cadillac dealership with this objective in mind. I'll spend the rest of my career right here. In order for that to happen, I've got to play it right off the top of the deck. My friend had said, whatever Chuck Bellis tells you, you can absolutely depend on it. I went to the other dealerships to look at a Cadillac. I went to see Chuck Bellis to buy a Cadillac. Reputation based on a character, that's what makes the difference. Now, if we're going to thrive in any economy, and I was one of those real fortunate human beings. I was born in L.A., that's Lower Alabama. And I was raised in Yazoo City, Mississippi. Now, I understand there are a lot of folks go around the country trying to impress people by claiming to be from Yazoo City, but I really am. Yazoo City is a spectacular place. It's produced a lot of incredible people, and people often ask me, how'd they do it? Very simple. They had a great superintendent of education and some fabulous preachers who faithfully preached the Word of God. I'm the 10th of 12 children. I asked my mom one time, I said, Mom, why so many? And she said, well, son, where do you think I should have stopped? Well, I sure didn't think after number 9. Now you can absolutely count on that.
Wow, what a joy to be here. Thank you, Bob. You have definitely been one of my inspirers, and it is so fun to be back. That actually took place before the last time I spoke, which was the first time. It was back in, I remember the exact date, February 13th, 2002. I remember it well because that happened to be my 40th birthday. Just so happened that brought my whole family, my sister, my brother-in-law, Brendan, Jean Hendricks, who come every year, and my parents, my little niece. And we were here. It was the morning of my 40th birthday, and it was the day that Bob had asked me to speak. So on the one hand, it was such a glorious day. I was getting to do one of my dreams. But I well remember the day because it was also a sad day for me as I woke up on my 40th birthday and realized that my dream of getting married had still no potential in my own eyesight of happening. You know, you can have some of your dreams coming true. And as I was praying over this, especially this morning, I felt like God was giving me a strong word of encouragement for you. You can have some of your dreams flourishing, and yet there are some things in your heart that seek to pull you down. And here it was. My professional life was on an upswing. In fact, I'd been working many, many years at that point and felt so grateful for the Lord for blessing my professional life, a professional life that I really never dreamt of having, but God had brought it about by His goodness. And yet here was my heart sad because I was not married. Now, what I did not know is that though I was turning 40, that indeed was the year that God was going to bring my husband into my life. And it was an amazing year. We met in New York City right after 9/11. God led my husband Ron Lewis to come to New York with a team of pastors to plant a church in the heart of New York City. And they decided they better advertise a little bit for the church because all of them had had churches in other cities. So one of them said, I'll design the ad, and Ron, you go out and raise the money to run the ad in Charisma magazine. So Ron went out, raised $17,000 to run the ad in Charisma magazine for 3 months. And so that Christmas, right before I spoke here, my mom was reading through the Charisma magazine, found this ad. She said, Lynette, have you heard of this church in New York? And I said, no, I hadn't. So I decided to check it out. Well, fast forward, we discovered later that only one person in the church ever came from that ad. And that was me. My husband says he got off pretty cheap for $17,000. That was only the beginning. But he was truly and is truly exceedingly, abundantly, above and beyond anything I could ask or think or hope for. He has an amazing story, was a church planter and in the ministry for the last 20-some years now, has planted churches all over the world, and then went through one of the darkest nights that you can ever go through as a pastor. His wife of 18 years decided she wanted nothing more to do with God. They had 4 sons, and she walked away completely. It was a long fought battle. And you know, when you're in Hollywood, it's great news when you go on to a second wife and have a new life, but it's certainly not that when you're in the ministry. And so Ron's story is one of great comeback, and my story is one of long desert walking, not knowing how God is going to come through. But for both of us, God has done exceedingly abundantly more. And I'm here to tell you today, I felt a strong sense this morning that some of you have children that are not walking with God. And you are carrying that burden, and it keeps you up at night. The enemy has spoken to you and said you are disqualified to speak because even your own family is not fully serving the Lord. And I'm here to tell you today that God is working in your kids' lives. God is working in those places where the enemy has told you you are disqualified. Maybe you've gone through a failure in your business. Maybe you've gone through a dark night of the soul. Maybe you've gone through physical challenges and things where your faith does not seem to be prevailing. There is a desert season, but God brings us to the promised land. I did not know then, at my 40th birthday, that I was mere days and weeks away from my promised land. I was reading this morning how all of a sudden the day came where Joshua went through the camp, and he said, in 3 days, we are going into the promised land. Get your supplies ready. Get yourself ready. Consecrate yourself, for we are going in. They had walked in the desert for 40 years. Some of you, you've been walking in the desert for many years, and God is here to tell you, you get your supplies ready. You get your life ready. You get your story ready. The lessons in the desert are going to equip you for the promised land. You will not regret. You will be ready. You will be able. You're going to fight wars. You're going to conquer giants because of the lessons God's taught you in the desert.